Hello there and welcome back. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who watched the last video for being thoroughly decent in the comment section. I know it's a topic that invokes a lot of emotional reactions, so just a quick thank you for everybody for staying respectful. My friend Rachel's interview on biodiversity in Palestine is up, the link is in the description, as is the link for the Discord if you'd like to join the discussion. In the United Kingdom, over the past few months, we've had periodic demonstrations known as Kill the Bill protests against the police, crime and sentencing bill that is going through Parliament. It's a radical 300-page overhaul of the justice system and holds a lot of proposals, some of which are good, some of which are bad. Who wants to read 300 pages of a bill though? Well, weirdos like me for one. So let's strap ourselves in and get down to it. Now I fully expect some flack for my views, so feel free to fire away at me in the comments section. The bill is a cynical response to the BLM protests following the death of George Floyd and an eruption of anger in the United Kingdom last spring-autumn. This bill seeks to capitalise on that and continue delivering the Conservatives' credentials as the party of law and order, in their attempt to build a culture war and smash the opposition with it. It's purely a political move. The slogan, Defund the Police, made its way onto the United Kingdom streets and scared the living daylights out of Middle England voters. In the United States, it was the right policy with an awful slogan. In the United Kingdom, it's an awful policy and an awful slogan. As a political scientist, much of my time is spent working out how messages are delivered to people. In fact, I just spent the last weekend going on campaign with a political party, so I'm not a dusty remote academic. This is academic knowledge paired with lived experience. Defund the Police isn't appropriate in the United Kingdom because the police in the UK have more powers than they need, but not enough funding for frontline policing. This bill is an in-your-face attack on the Defund the Police movement. In a nutshell, this bill seeks to deliver significantly more powers to the police, increase sentencing, and make the United Kingdom significantly harsher on crime. I say harsher instead of tougher very deliberately. Though this is unpopular in the public eye, it has long been established amongst social scientists that getting tough on crime is often paradoxical. Getting tough on crime often results in very little actual effect in lowering crime rates, but is an electoral goldmine. It is one of the few constants over the past century that if you bang the tough on crime bell, you will ship votes like a golden goose. What this results in is an electoral policy that is nothing but pure posturing. What solves crime is a firm, fair and robust justice system that is plugged into a strong social security net. That means that you stop crime by stopping the conditions that cause crime. This means policies like community policing, increasing education, increasing funding for community centres, sports clubs, job training programs and creating a safe atmosphere for children. The biggest recruiter any criminal gang or organisation has is the sense that the streets aren't safe and that hard work won't pay. Remove those recruiting pressures and you will see less people get dragged into the violent orbit of crime. This is not a popular stance. If anything, it is rejected virulently by the general public and derided as being soft on crime. The reason for this is simple. Most people like to think of themselves as having come from humble origins. It's why the theory of privilege often causes such offence, and that they have earned everything they have. So if they can do it, these people who are committing crime should be able to as well. They don't give into the temptation of criminal get-rich-quick schemes. They've got a job and they work their way up. Often the people who believe this the strongest tend to be those who have very little experience of the conditions that spawn most crimes. I've lived in one of the most deprived areas of the United Kingdom for most of my life. I know plenty of criminals. I know plenty of people who fell into that life, and I'm one of the lucky ones. This is less to do with my innate goodness and more to do with the fact that I was lucky enough not to fall into any of those orbits. There are several moments where it could have been very easy. This doesn't make me special, it just makes me lucky. As such, I've seen it up close. I've seen what causes a lot of these crimes, and my lived experience backs up the findings of practically all academic studies into the causes of crime. The causes of crime are interlinked with society itself. It is no surprise that as the Great Recession hit in 2008, crime started to rise. It's no surprise that after deep and sweeping cuts to the social security net, crime started to rise. It is absolutely no surprise that after destroying the state's ability to care for its most vulnerable citizens, many people in those areas turned to crime. This is an uncomfortable, unsaid truth for a lot of voters, that the decisions that we as a society made caused crime rates to rise. The response to this is often one of a hard fist, that we must crush crime and make it so unpalatable that the very idea of committing a crime is one that provokes fear in a would-be criminal. Tell that to someone in a Siberian prison, or perhaps a Turkish one, or maybe yet someone who's interacted with the Saudis' justice system. Yet, every one of those societies has crime. There is little evidence to suggest that such harsh conditions reduce crime. In fact, repeated studies over the past few decades have shown that there is no reduction as a result of the tough on crime policies. So we know it doesn't work, but we know it's an electoral goldmine, which is why politicians keep banging that drum. This is not the only such example. Immigration is of course the other giant drum that is completely counterfactual but shits out votes, as does tax rises. I'll do both of those in some videos soon. So now that we've established that the tough on crime approach doesn't work, why then is this bill so bad? I've been vocal in the past in saying that even the best law, if written poorly, can turn into a nightmare. This is one element of this bill which I want to address before I get into specific parts that are causing serious concerns. When Parliament makes laws, the police and the judiciary have to try and interpret what Parliament means. For this reason, it is very important for Parliament to be very, very specific about exactly what it is they want when they are creating law, especially when concerning criminal laws and the impact on civic freedoms. Vague statements and undefined clauses lead to bad policing. Take the following. Conditions may be imposed if the noise from the protest may have a relevant impact on the persons in the vicinity, and that impact may be significant. It does not define what it means with any of those words. What is a relevant impact and what is a significant impact? Is it the police that decide? The Home Secretary? It doesn't specify. Or perhaps the now infamous public nuisance offence. It is a new offence that has a maximum sentence of up to 10 years for anyone who doesn't act that intentionally or recklessly causes serious harm to the public or puts them at risk of such harm. The proposed definition of serious harm includes where a person suffers serious annoyance, serious inconvenience, or serious loss of amenity. What the hell is a serious annoyance? It isn't defined. I get seriously annoyed by amateur American authors taking British material and filling them with Americanisms. Does that mean I can send the bobbies round and stick them in for a decade? Imagine my going crazy when Liverpool score is seriously annoying to everyone in Manchester and everyone around me. Am I committing a public offence? Ridiculousness aside, the seriousness of this vagary cannot be understated. This applies to lots of laws. The Stansted 15 were prosecuted under terrorism laws that don't even apply in that case, which is what the Court of Appeal eventually recognised. When you write laws, you have a duty, a moral duty to the office you hold and the people you govern to consider how that law is going to be implemented, not by yourself, but by your successors. When you write vagaries into law, you open up the potential for abuse, and we know for a fact that when a power exists, the police and the Crown Prosecution Service will attempt to use that power, whether it is what Parliament intended or not. Take the way the police have used COVID-19 laws to squash lawful demonstrations, even when they could have taken a more even-handed approach, as with the Sarah Everard protests. One of the biggest changes is to charges relating to unlawful assemblies. When the police declare a protest or gathering unlawful and order people to move on, the police must prove that the demonstrator knew that such a gathering now violated a lawful order. So in simple terms, if you're at a protest and a police officer tells you that the protest needs to move 2 streets over and you refuse, then you are guilty by the standards of a law. That's a pretty reasonable standard, I would say. The proposed change removes the burden of proof and says that the protester ought to have known, even if they are not told so. If you're at a lawful protest and it contains crowds of thousands, the police at the front of the protest can declare the assembly unlawful and must be moved, whilst you at the back can have no knowledge of this but can still be arrested and convicted as if you did. Obviously, this is a very bad idea. All it takes is one police officer to render thousands of people liable for criminal charges, which is not only a grave threat to civil rights, but also, in practical terms, a threat to the justice system. How are the courts supposed to put through fair prosecutions when protests are a rather regular thing? We've already got a backlog of cases, and the justice system has been cut to the bone. There is a lack of funding and lots of vacancies. How do Conservatives propose to fix this? Increase the burden on the courts, of course. More pressure to do this quickly, but not properly, then results in unsafe convictions and eventually millions in compensation down the line. It's a foolish idea to make this change, and it's nothing but pure political posturing for the press. And bear in mind that these proposals aren't targeted towards violent protests or racists attacking people or chanting racist slogans. These measures are targeted towards peaceful demonstrations aimed at raising awareness, things like climate change protests, protests against NHS cuts or school cuts. These are a vital part of our freedom to express our opinion on the government of the day, and that is what the government is attempting to crack down on. It's an attack on dissent and civic freedoms. It imposes unnecessarily harsh penalties on damage towards statues, which is a rather bizarre thing to focus on. In the words of Peter Kyle, a Labour MP during the debate around the bill, if I pushed the statue into the river and then turned around and pushed the mother and her child into the river, I would be punished more harshly for the statue. This again compounds the lack of funding for the justice system because UK prisons are already overcrowded. Adding longer, harsher sentences for crimes is either going to create an arbitrary justice system where some people are punished and others aren't, or is going to create a justice system where we cannot fulfill our lawful obligations towards the well-being of people who have committed what is effectively a victimless crime. This is a far cry from the land of justice. The bill also widens the exclusion distance from Parliament that protests are not allowed in. This is even more ridiculous as the reasoning is that MPs find it annoying, but that's the point of a protest, to make your voice heard and to let members know that we disapprove. It's patently absurd to expect a protest to stay quiet and not be an inconvenience, but that inconvenience is the price of having a democracy. Furthermore, there are several clauses in the bill that may and do seem to be in contravention of the European Convention on Human Rights, of which the United Kingdom is a signatory to. The United Kingdom has already damaged its reputation at home and abroad for having a government system that respects human rights and is scrupulously front-footed on this. Now we are at risk of being tarred in the same light as the United States or regimes such as China or Brazil. Ultimately, this bill is not about public safety. It's a hodgepodge of measures designed to cause political damage to the opposition, to gain political capital amongst voters and to posture rather than fix any real nuisance. What is even more startling is that this bill went through no consultation. There was no green paper stage here. The government simply drafted a bunch of measures and put them forward. This is not the way laws are supposed to be made, nor is it ever a good idea to rush through laws. If this government truly cared about solving crime, they wouldn't be sparking culture wars, they wouldn't deploy counterfactual narratives on the causes of crime, and they certainly wouldn't be pursuing a draconian bill that is so poorly written that it damages the civil rights of Britons for generations to come. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you for coming along. This is what I think. What do you think? If you like the content, help the channel grow by sharing and subscribing, join the Discord if you'd like to discuss things further, or drop a comment. My dearest thanks to my Patreons. I'll see you next week for a totally fascinating look at tax. Thank you and goodbye.